Floyd Patterson never had the luxury of an easy childhood. Born into a struggling family in Waco, North Carolina, he was one of 11 children, packed into a household where every meal was a battle his parents fought with relentless hard work. When they moved to Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood, young Floyd felt lost in a world that never seemed to have space for him. School didn't make sense. Words on a page felt like enemies, and the constant burden of watching his parents struggle left him feeling useless. By the time he was 9, he had given up on school and started stealing small things at first, like milk and fruit, anything to bring home and ease his mother's worries. But the small thefts turned into a cycle of trouble. Courtrooms became familiar places. He guessed he had stood before a judge 30 or 40 times, each time knowing he'd be back again soon. At 10, one judge had finally had enough. Floyd was sent away to the Wiltwick School for Boys, a reform school in upstate New York. He thought he was being thrown in jail. It was his mother who convinced him otherwise, that this was a chance, not a punishment. It changed everything. At Wiltwick, he found discipline. He found direction. And most importantly, he found himself. 2 years later, he left that school a different boy. He wasn't just another kid lost to the streets of Bed-Stuy anymore. He was an athlete. At New Paltz High School, he excelled in every sport he touched. But it was boxing that called to him. At 14, he walked into the Bedford-Stuyvesant Boxing Association gym, put on gloves, and hit something real for the first time in his life. 3 years later, the world saw what Floyd Patterson was capable of. In 1952, he became an Olympic gold medalist in Helsinki, dominating the middleweight division with a skill and determination that couldn't be ignored. That same year, he won the National Amateur and New York Golden Gloves middleweight championships. And in the shadows, watching closely, was a man who would shape his destiny, Cus D'Amato. Under D'Amato's guidance at Gramercy Gym, Patterson was no longer just a promising young fighter. He was on his way to becoming something much greater. His story was no longer about a boy who had been lost. It was about a man who had found his way and was ready to fight for it. Floyd Patterson stepped into the professional boxing world with a quiet determination that masked the storm brewing within him. With every fight, he climbed higher, each victory bringing him closer to the dream that he and his manager, Cus D'Amato, had set their sights on the heavyweight championship. But dreams don't come easy, and neither did the road to the top. His first real setback came on June 7, 1954, when he faced former light heavyweight champion Joey Maxim at Brooklyn's Eastern Parkway Arena. For 8 rounds, the veteran outmaneuvered the young Patterson, handing him his first professional defeat. It was a lesson, not a loss. Patterson walked away understanding that talent alone wouldn't be enough. He had to be smarter, stronger, and relentless. For much of his early career, he fought within the light heavyweight ranks, but D'Amato had bigger plans. From the start, his manager had made it clear Floyd wasn't chasing a light heavyweight belt. He was going after the heavyweight championship. The goal became even more real when Rocky Marciano announced his retirement on April 27, 1956, leaving the throne vacant. The boxing world scrambled to find a successor, and Patterson, now ranked among the top contenders, stepped into the mix. His defining moment came on November 30, 1956. Under the bright lights of the ring, he faced the legendary Archie Moore for the World Heavyweight Championship. Moore was dangerous, experienced, and battle-hardened, but Patterson was faster, sharper, and unwilling to be denied. In just 5 rounds, he sent Moore crashing to the canvas, becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in history at just 21 years old. He was also the first Olympic gold medalist to win a professional heavyweight title, a feat that solidified his place in history. His reign began with a series of title defenses, turning back challengers like Tommy Hurricane Jackson, Pete Rademacher, Roy Harris, and Brian London. But on June 26, 1959, he ran into a force he hadn't faced before: Ingemar Johansson of Sweden. Johansson didn't just beat Patterson that night. He dismantled him, knocking him down 7 times in 3 rounds before the referee stepped in. Floyd lost his title, and with it, the world's respect. Johansson became a hero overnight, the first European to claim the heavyweight crown from an American since 1933. But Patterson wasn't done. A year later, on June 20th, 1960, he stepped back into the ring with Johansson, determined to take back what was his. This time, There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. In the 5th round, Patterson unleashed a left hook that sent Johansson sprawling. The Swede landed hard, eyes glazed, blood dripping from his mouth, his foot twitching as the referee counted him out. He lay unconscious for 5 minutes before being helped onto a stool. That night, Floyd Patterson made history once again, becoming the first man ever to regain the undisputed heavyweight championship. The rivalry didn't end there. Their final showdown came on March 13, 1961. Johansson had his moments, knocking Patterson down twice in the 1st round, but Floyd refused to stay down. He retaliated with a crushing left hook of his own, sending Johansson to the mat. The fight raged on, but Patterson's relentless body attacks sapped the Swede's power. By the 6th round, Johansson had nothing left. Patterson ended the trilogy the way he wanted, with his hand raised in victory, proving once and for all that he was the better man. With Johansson behind him, Patterson defended his title against Tom McNeely in Toronto, securing a 4th round knockout. But one shadow still loomed over his reign: Sonny Liston. Patterson had avoided him for years, largely due to Cus D'Amato's refusal to put him in the ring against a fighter with mob connections. But when business disputes forced Patterson to take control of his own career, he finally agreed. The fight that would change everything was now on the horizon. Floyd Patterson had never backed down from a challenge, but this was different. Stepping into the ring against Sonny Liston wasn't just about defending his title. It was a fight burdened with expectations, controversy, and pressure unlike anything he had ever faced. The odds were stacked against him. The betting lines favored Liston. Even John F. Kennedy had reportedly urged him not to take the fight. The NAACP worried about the implications of a Liston victory, fearing that his mob connections and criminal past would cast a shadow over the civil rights movement. But Patterson wasn't fighting for politics, predictions, or even his reputation. He was fighting because that's what champions did. Despite the media portraying him as the hero and Liston as the villain, Patterson knew that narratives meant nothing when the bell rang. Liston was bigger, stronger, and carried devastating power in his fists. If Floyd was going to win, it had to be with speed, precision, and heart. But on September 25, 1962, under the lights of Comiskey Park in Chicago, those weapons failed him. He hesitated. He didn't move the way he needed to. And Liston, sensing weakness, attacked. A relentless barrage of punches sent Patterson crashing to the canvas. In just one round, his reign as heavyweight champion was over. It was one of the fastest knockouts in history. Humiliated, Patterson couldn't face the world. He left the arena wearing dark glasses and a fake beard, slipping into the shadows for the long drive back to New York. The public that once adored him now turned away. Rumors swirled: was the fight fixed? Had he given up too easily? Overnight, the respect he had fought years to earn seemed to vanish. Yet, Patterson wasn't finished. A rematch was set for April 1963, but when Liston injured his knee swinging a golf club, the fight was pushed back to July 22nd. This time, Patterson wasn't just fighting to reclaim his title, he was fighting to reclaim his pride. The stage was Las Vegas, and for the first time, both fighters were guaranteed million-dollar paydays. But history repeated itself. Patterson fell again, knocked out in the 1st round, lasting only a few seconds longer than before. These two fights marked the only times in his career that Floyd Patterson was counted out. The losses sent him into a deep depression. The man who once wore the heavyweight crown now found himself questioning everything. Still, he refused to stay down. He climbed back into the ring, stringing together victories that reminded the boxing world of his resilience. He beat Eddie Mackin. He defeated George Chuvalo in a brutal war that won the ring's Fight of the Year. Slowly, Patterson rebuilt himself, and soon, he was once again the #1 contender, this time for the title held by Muhammad Ali. On November 22nd, 1965, in Las Vegas, Patterson had one last shot at history. If he won, he would become the first man to reclaim the heavyweight championship 3 times. But the fight was personal. Ali saw Patterson as a relic of a past generation, an opponent who refused to call him Muhammad Ali, instead calling him by his birth name, Cassius Clay. Ali taunted him, labeling him an Uncle Tom for speaking against the Nation of Islam. Patterson, a devout Catholic, saw things differently. "This fight is a crusade," he declared. "I am fighting Clay as a patriotic duty. I am going to return the crown to America." But in the ring, words meant nothing. Patterson entered the fight with an injured sacroiliac joint. As the rounds went on, the pain only worsened. Ollie toyed with him, snapping jabs into his face, punishing him at will. Patterson fought on, but the gap between them was undeniable. By the 12th round, the referee had seen enough. The fight was stopped, and once again, Patterson was left to endure defeat. Afterward, Ollie praised Patterson's toughness, but admitted age had worked against him. Floyd had lost another title shot, but this time, there was no disguise, no escape into the night. He had given everything he had, and no matter how the world judged him, Patterson had already proved time and time again that true champions rise, even in defeat. Even as the years passed, Floyd Patterson refused to fade away. He was no longer the heavyweight champion, but in his heart, he was still a fighter, still chasing that one last shot at glory. In 1966, he traveled to England, stepping into the ring at Wembley Stadium against British hero Henry Cooper. The crowd was electric, but Patterson silenced them in the 4th round, knocking Cooper out cold. He wasn't done yet. When Muhammad Ali was stripped of his title for refusing military service, boxing scrambled to find a new champion. The World Boxing Association set up an 8-man tournament, and Patterson saw his opening. He fought Jerry Quarry to a draw in 1967, then faced him again 4 months later. It was a razor-close fight, but the judges handed Quarry a controversial decision. Patterson disagreed, but he wasn't the type to argue, he just moved forward. Stockholm, 1968. One more chance, this time against Jimmy Ellis. 15 brutal rounds. Patterson broke Ellis's nose, knocked him down at least, that's what he believed. But when the final bell rang, the referee raised Ellis's hand. Another controversial loss. Another dream slipping away. Outside the ring, life was just as complicated. In 1969, Patterson divorced his first wife, Sandra, who had begged him to retire. But he couldn't walk away yet. The ring still called to him. In 1972, at 37 years old, he laced up his gloves one final time for a rematch with Muhammad Ali. This wasn't the same Patterson who had fought Ali years before. This was an older, wiser warrior. He held his own for 7 rounds before a cut over his "I forced the stoppage." And just like that, his fighting days were over. No grand announcement, no farewell tour. The man who had always fought with quiet dignity simply stepped away. In retirement, an unlikely friendship bloomed. Ingemar Johansson, the man who had once knocked Patterson down 7 times in a single fight, became one of his closest friends. They visited each other every year, even running marathons together in Stockholm and New York. Boxing never truly left Patterson's life. He served 2 terms as chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission and was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1991. His son, Tracy Harris Patterson, followed in his footsteps, becoming a world champion himself, making them the first father and son duo to hold boxing titles. But the years took their toll. Patterson, the man who had been so fast, so elusive in his youth, began to slow down. Alzheimer's crept in, stealing his memories. The blows he had absorbed in the ring, each punch, each war had left their mark. In his final years, he battled both the disease and prostate cancer, spending his last days in New Paltz, New York, where the high school football field bore his name. On May 11th, 2006, at the age of 71, Floyd Patterson passed away. But his legacy? That was untouchable. He had fallen time and time again, but he had always risen. And in the end, that's what defined him, not the titles, not the knockouts, but the unbreakable spirit of a man who never stopped fighting.